Welcome to Webster Now with your host, Garrett Wagner.
Right now, as I sit here talking to you, there's a dog living in a single kennel in the basement of Town Hall. 17 days it's been down there. That cage was built to hold an animal for a day, maybe two. And the reason it's still down there is a problem this town has been struggling with for 2 years. And we're going to spend real time today covering it because you deserve to know what's going on. It's not the only thing that slipped in the dark this past month. The board sat down to vote on an agreement that puts police officers in our schools, and not one of them had a copy of it in front of them. So they didn't vote. And that's the 15th vote this year that hasn't gone through. And it's only making the picture clearer. Then there's the grant. $10,000, a hard deadline, and a plan the board was piecing together right at the table because the details, they didn't show up to the last second. What was it for? Flowers. I know. Stay with me on that one. We've also got a quick update on those Verizon towers the residents are paying attention to. And make it summer, and we know you've earned it this year. We got the good stuff worth putting on your calendar. Now, just a quick reminder, everything you hear today is my perspective only. Nothing said reflects official town policy or action. Honestly, a lot of tonight comes down to the same thing. How much of what happens in your town you only hear about after it's done? So we got to get you caught up. Let's start with something that's almost funny, shall we say. If it weren't our kids we're talking about. Every year, the town signs an agreement with the school district. It's how we put police officers in Webster schools. The district picks up 75% of the cost, and the town covers the rest. And this has been running smoothly for a long time. It is, by every measure, routine. The kind of thing that's supposed to be quick, yes. So it comes up for a vote. And there was a pretty basic question asked. Can we see the agreement? Where is it? And the answer came back, nobody had it. It wasn't in the folder. It wasn't in the system. The town attorney hadn't seen a copy. 5 people sitting at the table, ready to vote on a contract, and not one of them could put their hands on the actual document. Now, there's nothing sinister about that. The program's real. The officers are real. This is a paperwork didn't show up situation, not a scandal. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter how routine something is. You don't sign your name to a contract you haven't read. Not with your money, not with your schools. But they didn't. The board rescheduled it, pushed it 2 weeks to July 16th, so everyone could read it first. Everyone confirmed there was no harm in waiting. Easy call. So if you're keeping score at home, that makes 15 votes this year that came to the table and didn't go through. That number's been climbing all year. Usually for this version of this exact reason. The information wasn't all there yet. Now, hold that thought, because it almost happened again. Monroe County opened up a small pool of money for local environmental projects. And the town proposal was simple. Along Webster's roadsides, there's narrow strips of grass. In specific areas, the medians, corner lots, the highway department mows them like twice a year. Because that's all the budget and the crew that can manage logistically. The plan was to replace that grass with low native plants to maintain themselves. Residents have been calling the town unhappy with how the strips looked. Native planting would cut the mowing, feed the pollinators, and keep the quarters tended. A sensible idea. The problem was the time left on the clock. The grant application was due July 8th, and the details reached the board on the same day of the July 2nd town board meeting. I know firsthand. A resident stopped me before the meeting and said he'd read about the project at Facebook at 4 o'clock in that afternoon. I learned those details. He learned at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. So resident had the plan in hand an hour before the people who had to vote on it. So what happened? The board worked out the basics in the room live. There was a lot of discussion. How large of a match should the town put up? What's the full budget? Does this count for planting at all 7 sites or just one? And again, there was a lot of confusion. But spending money with figures still missing is backwards. One resident asked me after the board meeting, and they said, hey, I'm for this, but why buy mature plants when seeds cost less? And that was a great question. One we didn't address live because we were still figuring it out. Ultimately, the board approved the application, $10,000 with an even smaller $7,500 match, keeping the town's outlay modest. The plantings, they'll be beautiful. But it was a decision assembled on the fly because information came late. And that's what makes it worth our attention. The same night, the board did the opposite. A second grant came through, far larger, $150,000 for the town's long-range planning code updates from the comprehensive plan suggestions. That one they had time with. The match was covered, using sound staff was talked about and negotiated. Clean, unanimous, quick. Same board, same night, two grants. The difference between the smooth one and a scramble came down to a single thing: time. Whether the details reached them early enough to think. Which brings us those cell towers you keep talking about. 2 weeks ago, we talked about these Verizon sites, Webster North and Lake Road, and the independent engineer the town wanted to have review Verizon's technical case. Well, finally, on July 2nd, the board authorized that review. The engineer's hired, and Verizon's paying for it. There's a federal deadline in these applications, and it runs through August 20th. The engineer's preliminary report is expected in early August. The full breakdown of what this review can and can't do, that's last week's episode. Today, the point is narrower. It's authorized, and it's moving forward, so stay tuned. At the workshop before the July 2nd meeting, the police chief and the town's animal control officer laid out a problem this town's been stuck on for years. I want to walk you through it because most residents, you don't know how bad it's gotten, and you need to be updated. Right now, the town has one kennel. It sits in the basement of Town Hall, and it's approved to hold a dog for about 24 hours. As of that meeting, there was a dog that had been in it for 17 days. It got so hot down there, the animal was in distress, so they had to move the kennel to a cooler part of the building, which happens to be the route used for other key parts of the police space. This is the town's entire animal sheltering capacity. One kennel in a basement built for a single day. And here's how Webster got here. A few years ago, the veterinary services the town relied on for sheltering disappeared. Larger companies bought up regional practices, and they stopped offering it. Around the same time, New York State raised the standards for how municipalities house these animals. And when the compliance deadline hitting this December, essentially the state said, towns, you have to pay more money to house dogs, and we're not going to help you pay for it. Miss it, and towns could face fines or an order to stop sheltering altogether. So the town went looking for options, and we've covered this before. Build its own kennel. Now that runs somewhere between $800,000 to maybe $1.5 million or more. The town had a grant last year to provide some of it, but it was a fraction of the cost. Sharing space with neighboring towns was a cheaper path, and for a while, Irondequoit looked willing, until the leadership changed in the last election, and they pulled out. And that leaves with there's no easy answer on the table. There may not be a good one at all. And some of the most compelling notes on that night came from Barb, our animal control officer. 40 years in veterinary medicine, retired, and came back to do this. At that July 2nd meeting, she explained what's happening out there. And it's not just Webster. There's a national shortage of veterinarians and a surplus of animals people can't afford to keep. The rescues are full. She's been calling in every favor she has for one dog and getting turned down everywhere. Her words to the board were blunt. The community doesn't know how bad it is until they call her. She has to tell them they can't help. There's no vote to cover here, no villain, and no simple fix to hand you. We have a town working through a problem with no good option and a deadline coming up. All right, let's end on some good stuff, okay? Webster summers are packed, and as always, there's a lot going on. The Webster Jazz Festival, believe it or not, it turns 20, and the kickoff is Friday, August 14th. Jazz in the Pubs, where 10 venues up and down Main Street each host a free concert through the evening. 10 stages, 10 sets, no cover. You walk from one to the next. If you've never been, it's one of the best nights the Village puts on all year. Down in the Village, got more good stuff going on. Friday nights, concerts in the park at Veterans Memorial Park on North Ave, 7 o'clock through the end of August. And if you want a little something else to do inside, the library summer reading program is going on right now for all ages through August 15th. This year's theme is dinosaurs and geology. Unearth a story. Any reading counts, and there are prizes. If you got kids for the home for the summer, this is an easy one. Take your pick. Get out there, stay in and read. Enjoy the summer. As we look back tonight, there's one thread through most of it. Agreement no one could read. A grant decided before the numbers showed up. A problem in the basement of Town Hall that's been building for years. Each a different story. all pointing to the same lesson. The sooner you know what's happening in your town, the more you have to know about how it turns out. And that's the whole reason for us coming together as a community. Now, if you thought this episode was worth your time, do me a favor. Like it, follow along, or send it to someone else in Webster who ought to know. I'm Garrett Wagner, and every step we take is a step towards a better Webster.
You've been watching Webster Now with Garrett Wagner. Join us next time for more local news and updates.